Picture this. It's the early 2000s. You had a pretty good day at school. Today, your teacher taught you how to make something called oobleck. It is a substance that almost seems to change the type of matter that it is, depending on the way that it is interacted with. Is it liquid? Is it solid? You wanted to call your mom on your Firefly to ask how it works, but since she says it's only for emergencies, you decide you'll ask during dinner. So, after you do your times tables and you read a chapter of your assigned homework that will inevitably traumatize you, something along the lines of Stone Fox, Bridge to Terabithia, Child Called It, Flowers for Algernon, you name it, your babysitter says that now it's time that you can watch some TV. So you lay on your stomach. You sit in front of the TV so close you can practically feel the static as you eat your Yogos. It is time for your favorite PBS program. But today, something is different. Something is wrong. Elmo has been evicted from Sesame Street. Between the Lines shows your favorite puppets stuffed, poached. They just pulled an Old Yeller on Martha Speaks. You wake in a cold sweat. It was all just a nightmare. You scroll through social media in the dark, waiting for your heartbeat to return to normal. Instead, you see news that makes your stomach drop. The nation's public broadcasting system, decades long, home to Big Bird, Ken Burns documentaries, and All Things Considered, faces the biggest crisis in its nearly 60-year history with President Donald Trump's order to slash federal subsidies. The nightmare is real. For years, we've heard that it was thanks to viewers like us that PBS has continued to serve the American public. Now viewers like us need to band together to protect public media organizations like PBS and NPR. If you want to help out, you should visit protectmypublicmedia.org and email your lawmakers to protect public media organizations. Go on, I'm sure you're second screening right now. All you have to do is briefly type in a little bit of information and they'll take care of the rest. While you take care of that, I'm going to take a moment to step back and talk a little bit about the history of PBS. How did we get here? Where we are now? How is this still relevant? The Public Broadcasting Service, commonly referred to as PBS, was founded in 1969. For 5 decades, the network has been responsible for providing Americans with informational and educational programming. And this isn't just children's content. In a single season, PBS offered over 200 hours of documentary content that was consumed by over 50 million people. That's like if we took everyone from California and Michigan and collectively sat down for a Ken Burns watching party. For 22 consecutive years, PBS was voted the most trusted institution in America by the annual Proof Insight survey. One of the many services offered by the network is the children's educational programming. And as tempting as it may be to examine only my favorites, I think it's best to look at what the network considers to be its most venerable programming. And in its fast facts sheet, PBS says that shows like Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Reading Rainbow, and Wishbone are some of their defining programs. So let's take a look at that. I would say that most Americans are pretty familiar with Sesame Street, but if you weren't, it is a children's program that involves the use of fluffy little characters and puppets to cover topics such as letters, numbers, shapes, emotions, and other early learning concepts. More importantly, from the beginning, Sesame Street has showed harmony among its mixed-race neighbors. These episodes began airing in 1969, which was a mere 8 years after Ruby Bridges, who is still alive and well, by the way, began attending a desegregated school. And it was barely a year after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. It was very much still a turbulent time and far from racial harmony. And yet, PBS programming straight from the get-go was taking a firm anti-racist stance. 1969 would also be the year that Mr. Rogers and Officer Clemens would sit together with their feet in a kiddie pool, taking a stance against the fact that there were still segregated pools in America. Kids weren't just learning to read and to count, but they were also learning to show others empathy, even if they don't look like themselves. And there are many other concepts that are covered in this show. Things like grief, disability, divorce, bullying, and food and housing insecurity. You may then hear that and say, there's no way that shows like Reading Rainbow or Wishbone could even exist in the same vein. They seem relatively lighthearted compared to those things. But I think it's important to point out that literacy and reading is not an apolitical act or subject. In 2023, the PARCC assessment found that 23% of Black students and 32% of Latinx students showed proficiency in reading compared to 82% of their white classmates, which is an insane discrepancy. Even if you are afforded the right to literacy, you may also find that the content of interest has been challenged or banned. So I have to admit, it's not easy going to bat for someone like Colleen Hoover, whose work has been banned or challenged nearly 150 occasions in a year. But we have to acknowledge this is a matter of censorship, not culling for quality. Otherwise, we can keep these books on the shelves. And I do have to point out, I could not thoroughly examine all 10,000 cases that have been listed on the PEN America website. But by briefly looking through it, I can say there is one book or series of books that has been challenged that I can say I thoroughly, wholeheartedly agree with. And that is the Orange County Public District of Florida banning the entirety of E.L. James's 50 Shades series pending an administrative investigation. Other than that, many of these bans simply target narratives that focus on inequality or those that show characters of a minority within the story. But you know what really pisses me off? The most banned book in 23-24 school year with 98 bans is Jodi Picoult's 19 Minutes, which focuses on school shootings. During the 23-24 school year, there were 405 mass shootings. I just don't even have a transition to that. It just makes me mad. For every single ban, there were 4 shootings. The ability to read and read without restriction shouldn't be political, but it is. So that's my defense for the lovely Lamar Burton and a beagle in a Sherlock costume. You probably forgot this was about PBS for a second, huh? The network is also responsible for providing non-commercial news broadcasting, journalism, and emergency alerts. This includes severe weather warnings and amber alerts. Even if we somehow made do with the education system that we have as is, we were suddenly able to teach our students, all of them, reading and math at proficient levels. If the adults in a child's life were able to teach them about complex topics on a level that they will understand, how do we as a community protect a child when they go missing if we don't have amber alerts? If an adult in a child's life puts that child at risk, how can communities learn what the child looks like, what the adult looks like, what vehicle is being driven, where they are or would be in the area? How do we learn this information before it is too late if there is no amber alert system? Well, that might seem a little bit negative. So let's just go back and we'll live in a pretend world where all adults can be trusted. Even if that is true, how are we expected to stop tornadoes? If we're not going to learn when they're happening, when they have hit, we might as well just prevent them, because I guess that's our best shot at this point. Now, I am no scientist, but personally I think we could maybe have millions of really big fans, and we'll just sort of like broadcast a radio signal to someone who is operating that fan, and we'll just see if we can get it to spin in the opposite direction, and maybe that'll make the tornado just sort of like disperse. And then of course there's also the trouble that comes with like rain, hurricanes, monsoons. I think maybe a big rubber dome is gonna be the case there. And I haven't quite figured out yet how to deal with earthquakes, and I really hope there's no flooding. But if I have learned anything from this presidency, it is that if you run things like a business, science doesn't matter. There are a lot of ways in which the basic person will benefit from public broadcasting services. We've already mentioned some of the children educational program that was likely very nostalgic to us and important to us developing as we grew up. Not to mention all of the necessary alert systems that are crucial to keeping people not just safe, but alive, genuinely keeping people alive. But even on the lightest note, if you're someone who follows NPR or has ever scrolled past one of their stories on Instagram, if you're someone who likes Tiny Desk concerts or has ever watched a TED Talk, let alone all of you podcast girlies who I know have listened to Serial, you should really do something to help out. And it's actually very simple. Again, we go to the link that I've mentioned and will link in the description. Simply filling out your name, address, zip code, phone number, and email. Really, that's it. The message is already scripted and will be sent to your appropriate legislator based on the information that you provide. That's really all that I've got today. If you watched it all, thank you for watching. And if you have or plan to do anything to continue to support public media, thanks. It's thanks to viewers like you that we got this far. Bye guys.